We got our featured speaker coming up. Trevor, why don't you come on up and we'll let him talk. He's got a couple options for what we can talk about tonight. But Trevor, you guys all got the bio?
Around 200 or so.
Around 200. So within a couple years investing, he hit 100 units and now 200 units and just seeing some incredible scale. So we're all here to get some insight in what you're doing, man.
So I don't exactly have anything specific prepared for you guys because I'm filling in for who was supposed to speak or what were they going to speak on.
A guy named Luke, but I was one of Jesse's friends.
Gotcha. So a little bit about me, so you guys know who I am. So like Ryan said, my name's Trevor. I'm 28 years old. I own something like 200 rental units and over 40 million worth of real estate. I started buying stuff when I was 22 years old. I was actually working as an engineer. I was making like 50 grand a year when I started out house hacking. So I would just buy a house, rent it out by the room, and I would repeat that as many times as possible. I built up enough income from that where I quit my job and I decided to invest full-time in real estate. I did not realize at that point that you needed a W-2 job to qualify for loans. So my whole plan of buying houses that way was ruined. And then I learned how to buy deals creatively or partner with other people and then continue to scale. So I went from something like the first year I started investing, I bought 2 houses, then I bought something like 10 units the next year and then 30 and then so on and so forth. So I've been doing this almost 7 years now. So I learned how to do all of this stuff from going to events just like this and talking to people in this room. So if you guys aren't buying deals, there's people in this room who can give you all the information you need that are already a few steps ahead of you. So these places are really powerful, and it's exactly how I learned how to do my first deal, and so many past that, and people have given me all the information, so I try to give it back to you guys. So with that being said, I have a couple different options of things we could do tonight, but I kind of wanted to gauge the room and see what would be most valuable to you guys. So it sounds like we have across the board, but raise your hand if you haven't bought anything yet in the process. Okay, who owns like 0 to or 1 to 5 properties? Okay, and then who owns like over 10 properties? Okay, so we have all the way across the room. So one thing I would like to do is today I help people just own more real estate. So like I just talk, my favorite thing to talk is real estate. My whole goal is helping people own more, taking lessons I've learned to help others do that. I've learned a lot along the way. I've gone through scaling. I lost all of my money and then went like $500,000 in debt. I had to figure out how to solve that and so on and so forth. So I like to share these lessons. So one idea I had is we can do like a mastermind thing if you guys are cool, all sharing with each other and talking about some of your personal experiences. And my goal would be to go through your personal scenario, what your goals are and what roadblocks you're facing, so we can try to overcome those and come up with like action steps that you guys can go home and take to keep on scaling your portfolio and actually take action with. Or you can just listen to me speak and I can do like deal case studies. I can teach you how to use creative finance, or I can teach you about commercial deal structures. Does any of that sound attractive to you guys? Don't be scared to speak up. Okay, let's take a survey here. Who likes the commercial underwriting idea? 1, 2. Who likes creative financing? Deal case studies, where we break it down. And then who likes the mastermind idea where we break down some stuff? No one likes that? Okay, a couple people?
Can you, in like 5 minutes, share your I lost $500,000 and any backstory?
Yeah, so I thought it was really cool to own 100 rental units when I was like 24 or 25, and that was my whole goal. I learned it was way better to own 20 rental units that are well performing than 100 really shitty rental units. So by doing that, I bought super high levered property. Like I will still make millions of dollars on these properties, but I had no income at this time and I should not have been doing that and taking that amount of risk. It taught me a lot and I learned how to solve problems. So like realistically, yes, I should have done it because it worked out, but I wouldn't recommend it for most people. So I bought super high levered properties that were super value add, and I had no idea how to personally rehab these or take care of any of that. I just thought it was really cool to own 100 rental units, and I set a goal of owning 100 rental units. So I bought all these things super high levered. They were bleeding super heavily. I blew through, I had like, I don't know, 400 grand in cash or so. Blew through all that. At the same time, I read this book about not tracking your living expenses once you've like reached financial independence, because you don't need to track everything super close. And I was living off like 14 grand a year at that time. I've spent like 100 to 200 grand going on vacations and all this stuff. And then I also went into a partnership and got $250,000 stolen at the same time. So I went from like 400 grand to negative $300,000 that I slapped on credit cards and I was paying 30% on. And then I had to figure out, how do I solve this problem and get out of this when I'm making no income? I have all these properties that are continuing to bleed, and then so on and so forth. So those are mistakes I made that we try to help people avoid making. But you are going to go through tough times as you're building a real estate portfolio, and that showed me I could solve a $700,000 problem. So now today we solve multi-million-dollar problems. So I'm doing not that same thing, but I'm facing larger problems on a bigger scale. So a mix. So I learned from going to things like this, and I was listening to every single book. I was doing like 12 hours of education every day, which you do not need to do. But I was just learning about all the ways to structure deals. So no deal I was doing was the same, other than the fact that I had not very much money, so I was trying to buy every single thing with no money. And when you do that, it can work, but if you have no money and you're buying a deal 100% levered, it's typically not cash flowing to start. It can still make sense to do, but I could not support the bleed at that time, and I did not realize I could not, because I wasn't tracking things. So the same time I was not tracking my personal finances, I stopped tracking my portfolio, which was a terrible mistake to make. So I did not even know I had this problem. I was just writing $50,000 checks, being like, oh, that's just 1 month, I have another $350, it doesn't matter. And then once you hit zero, you're like, oh shit, this is a problem. And then you hit negative 300, and you're like, this is a major problem.
So what kind of debt do you have?
Oh, yeah, a mix of seller notes, bank debts. Like I was taking debts from just anywhere possible.
Yeah, so you said something about, 100% financing, like no money moving into a deal. Sometimes it can still make sense. What characteristics are you looking for to make it make sense when you have no
Yeah.
being adverse?
So I'll actually show you guys this then. So maybe we'll do a blend. I like this. So this is an actual deal example. How do I?
Yeah, it'll
Okay.
it takes a minute to.
So this is a deal example of buying it with no money and where I think it makes no sense. I didn't actually buy this. One of our clients bought this. But so it'll pop eventually. But this is a fourplex that they bought with no money. They didn't buy it with no money, but they ended with no money on the deal. So it was a $725,000 fourplex. It was just sitting on the market. No one wanted to pay that price because it wasn't really worth it. It was probably worth $650, $675, whatever. It was this thing. Hopefully you can see. So it was renting decently, but it was just overpriced. So on this thing, it was just an older seller. He was 70 plus years old, trying to self-manage. And he just didn't want to own this thing, but he was stuck on the price. So what we did is we came in and we set it up with a DSCR loan and a partial seller note on it. So we just came in, closed the transaction just like a normal transaction, and the perfect person to borrow from in that sense is now the seller, because they have $700,000 that they don't potentially need all of the money on. So they can still defer the tax on a note like that. All we did in this case was set up on a prom note. So we didn't even do a seller second. In these instances, you can place a seller second on a property, you can collateralize it to another property, or you can just take it on a promissory note and borrow it globally against yourself. You can also do UCC filings, which is secured to an
So
entity.
you're going really, really fast. Let's take it step by step. I think half the room knows what DSCRs are, but maybe
Yeah.
the other half don't.
So let me break it down simpler. Let's say you have $1 million property. You can get $750,000 from the bank, and the seller can give you $250,000, and you end with no money in the deal. You can't do that on any property. You just pay top dollar for a property that has no value add or it makes no sense, and now you lever it 100%. It doesn't always work. It can. But in this case, the dude was willing to pay top dollar for it, and he actually levered it a little bit higher so he could go fund that value add and get the value pop, and now it was cash flowing with that debt stack on it. So he got all the money back to go rehab this property, and now it's serviced once he went and issued QLRs, which is qualified legal reason or qualified landlord reason, I don't know the terminology, but 90-day notice to go move these people out because their units were in bad shape, turn the unit, get it to market rent. So that's a deal structure that you can do, and there's a lot of variations of that as well.
So he actually had 808.
$808,000 total debt stack that he could now service
So
once he
put
turned the
$75,000
units.
into fix up the property.
Yep.
You said it was still cash flow positive after the repairs.
Once he turned the units and then got to market rate.
Cool.
So my goal personally is getting long-term fixed rate debt and then getting a property that will eventually pay for itself on today's market rate and that debt stack. Because if you can do that, a loan is typically, if you have a 75% loan, it's typically paid down about 20% over a 10-year time frame. So if you just buy today's property and you just wait and it doesn't even really go up in value, you can almost refinance it just on principal pay down on loan. And then typically what real estate is doing is doubling every 7 to 12 years. So if I can do that, I would do it 100% of the time. And that's why if you guys do not own properties right now, you need to go put 3 to 5% down and buy a property, live in it, turn it into a rental. It literally doesn't really matter what the property is if you're just getting started. Like, you can still make it pencil and do good deals, but it's better to do that than nothing with almost any property. Yeah.
You keep saying it doesn't work. I'm assuming you mean that the income from the units don't pay the debt service. Does it mean by it doesn't work?
Yeah, so real estate working is interesting, which is why I would love to go around with everyone's different goals. Because a good deal for me could be a terrible deal for you, right? We have different goals, different things we are trying to accomplish. I know people that will buy real estate all day long that has negative cash flow, and they are happy to do so, and they do not care because it works globally for them. If you're a beginner,
What are some of the reasons that people do that in your experience?
so you still have loan pay down, depreciation, and appreciation on them, and your cash flow is pretty insignificant. We would invest out of state, but I would typically disagree with that because you'll make so much more money on the coastal markets through the other ways real estate pays you rather than cash flow, from what I've seen. So all of the real estate methods work in any market. You can literally invest anywhere. Everything works, but it's more so like, what is my skill set? What resources do I have? And what are my goals? And then go in that route. But if you're in Oregon, it's really hard to go to another market and like fully understand. So like, I live in Salem, for example, and if you're in downtown Salem, it's pretty nice. And then you go 7 blocks the other way, and now it's the get it. And if you're not in that market, you will not understand that at all unless you're traveling there and you know the area. Yeah. Yes.
So you're trying to get taxes below.
Yeah, so if you're a real estate professional like they are, you can carry over all of your losses from real estate and then any other active income. And depreciation alone, if you're accelerated and doing all that, you can have properties that actually break even but show huge paper losses and carry that over and save a ton of money on taxes. So like, a lot of wealthy people buy real estate just for depreciation alone.
Ben was asking me about, as we came in, about my thoughts on part-time agents. And, you know, I said 2/3 of the industry is that way, and, you know, there's some good and bad about it. But one of the reasons I think, if a high income earner and a real estate agent, if they're doing 2-3 deals a year and they get that real estate professional status, so you've got one spouse that does that, it can, again, if they're investing, it can reap huge rewards as far as the tax benefits. So I think that maybe a small percentage of those part-time agents have realized that, but I don't know. Sorry.
Sweet. I don't know who asked me about this, but hopefully I answered your question.
I think it was me asking about like, what makes a deal work, or versus what doesn't.
With no
like,
money.
What criteria are you looking for?
If I'm buying any deal I can buy with no money and it will pay for itself, I will do that 100% of the time, because why not? And most people will actually not do that. I've offered, for example, this is crazy. So I have a cousin who wants to get into real estate. I told them I would give them all the money for the down payment. They could buy it with no money, and they still didn't want to do it because they had the fear of getting started. So they had essentially no risk at that point, because I could tell them exactly what deal to buy. I was going to give them 100% of the money to buy it and co-sign the loan for them, and they still were scared to do it. So most people have different goals or just don't understand. But if you guys are getting started, like, the first deal is the hardest deal, and it gets easier and easier and easier the more you go. When I was 22 years old, like, I thought buying a 10-plex was like insurmountable, and now I'm buying like $20 million deals. So like, it grows and scales pretty fast. Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that value add properties are what like you're looking for? And it
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be like remodeling, it could just be increasing the rent.
Correct. So I will buy deals like this way, where I can buy with no money and I will pay top dollar for it and hold it for a really long time. The other way to buy a deal is just on price. So you're buying it conventionally, you're buying it for a cheap price, you're increasing the value, and you're getting an equity pop, and we do that as well. So every deal I buy, I need to understand what the seller's goals are and how can I give that to them so they will then sell me the property. So if I can buy a deal cheaper, that's awesome. You can go make more money on it. It's just very competitive. And then a lot of people are willing to overpay for properties and not know what's going on. So I'll give you guys a story. This is a deal I tried to buy 2 or 3 years ago. It was a 10 unit in Salem, all 1 bed, 1 baths. It sold for $1.5 million while renting for like $800, $900 a unit. And they got to buy it on seller carry with like 10% down with a 3-year term. Today that deal is worth $1.4 million after they went and spent another $300,000 to $400,000 on it, and they're trying to sell it for $1.75. And now their balloon payment is coming due, and it's now paid down a little bit, but to like $1.25. So they are stuck in that deal because they took on short-term debt and did not understand what a true value add is with no exit strategy. So the problem there is you have a seller who doesn't actually, maybe they understood and just knew they were gonna get the property back, but it was an elderly lady and she had no idea how debt works, how someone would actually exit this property on the back end. You got a broker who also has no idea how it works. And then you have a buyer who just thinks they're getting a good deal because they got to put low down on it. So that's just an example of like how value add can go wrong. So
They overpaid for the property.
overpaid, but they could have done that same deal in the same structure and structured their debt to 10 years. And they would have mitigated so much risk, they would have paid down the loan, and they would have had long enough time horizon to figure it out and increase rents high enough over that time period. Like you can't, like maybe it wouldn't have worked out, but over the entire history of real estate, that is what has happened. So I will take that risk, and if I can get a 10-year debt, I'll do it.
Yeah, I recognize you're about to say debts, but do you have kind of like a minimum amount of time you're willing to take on debt? Like, for example, this is a 5-year deal, not a 10-year. Where's your, like, this thing, it's gonna be a great deal, it's gonna be less.
I'll take on 1 to 2 year debt, but it's a true value add. So I know I can take it to this price point and like we're good to exit and we know we can refinance. But in those cases, I try to structure like construction to perm debt. And I'll show you, because I know, so we bought this deal, so I'll show you, you'll like this.
Yes, I wanna see how that turned out.
Okay. Let me try to figure out how to use this. So this is the perfect example of a conventional value add deal. So this is, 39 unit we bought, turned to 40 units. So this is in Astoria, Oregon. And then I know James previously because we used to broker, so we were cold calling every single person that owns properties, and James owns a bunch of properties, so we met him one time. This is one you were looking at originally, and then we ended up buying. It was sitting on the market for like 2 years for like 5.7, which was way overpriced. These things were rented for $600 to $800 a unit. It was a piece of shit, and like it was just dilapidated on the inside. A bunch of things wrong with it. So this deal I tried to buy creatively for 2 years, and the sellers did not want to do anything creative. They just wanted cash out. Today we have an in-house construction company, so doing renovations, I don't have to do anything. It's pretty easy. I just kick it to them and they handle it all. So this was me and my partners. I was offering these people like, hey, I'll give you $4.2 million. You carry a note for 1.5 or 2 million or whatever it may have been. But this was just 2 brothers living in this thing. They were self-managing and just living on the cash flow of it, not doing any repairs at all. And they basically had it handed to them, and then they had a balloon payment coming up on their debt, and they couldn't refinance it because they didn't improve the property at all, and now rates were up and it didn't debt cover. So in the commercial space, you have to have a certain amount of income or money you're making pretty much to service the loan, or they decrease your loan amount.
Which, by the way, is what happened during my negotiations. We started negotiations when rates were at 3.5, and 2 months later they were up to 8.
Oh, so you were right at that time.
It doesn't make sense anymore. And
Yeah.
the worst part was like they were like, "Oh, we want to talk to our lawyer and figure it all out." And I was
Yeah.
just like, every week was like, "Oh my gosh." And yeah,
It was just like, I mean, 40 units for, like, it sounds crazy because like 80 a door, but it was truly dilapidated. So we went and did $1 million renovation on this thing, or we budgeted $1 million. I think we actually came in at like 850. But this is like a deal that was a short-term structure that I knew I could get the equity pop on or the value pop on and then refinance out of, but I still didn't like to do that. So in those cases, I'll do construction to perm. So we structured this loan with, we put $1 million down, the bank gives us the rest of the money to purchase it and do the rehab. And once we get it to the performance that we said we could, they will actually give us that money back and structure it with new debt that they agreed to on the front end, and we don't have to go refinance, apply for new loans. Like people were like, what if rates go here? We don't know what's gonna happen. So we just locked it in on numbers that we knew would work. In this case, we actually had the deal. We liked the deal, and then we forgot to raise money for it actually for like 2 weeks or so before closing. and we gave away half the deal for 15% on their money, and then they get their money back out with a 15% return, and then own half the deal still. So we gave way too much of it away, and we wouldn't do that again, but we messed up a little bit. But it was still pretty cool. It worked out for us. I won't dive super deep in the numbers, but like it was renting for 600 to 800, and we took rents. I estimated we'd give them the 1,300. We've been renting for 1,600 a unit, so our NOI is even higher, and we get to pull more money out of it on the back end, essentially.
You talked to a couple lenders, right?
Yeah, we talked to a lot of lenders. So in the commercial space, lending is very interesting, and there's lenders who will do many different things. So we have an in-house debt broker who, it's a full-time job. They're talking to every single bank across the nation basically and finding us different debt products, because every bank likes to lend on something differently with different terms. So that's their full-time job, is just getting us loans. Yeah, so there was actually like 8 units that just were so, like, they didn't fix up at all and were vacant, I believe. So we actually just fixed those up first while we were issuing PLRs to the next phase. And all of the tenants wanted to stay on the property and they liked the new units, so they just moved to the new units for the most part, and then we did their units next and just kept rolling that. Yeah, so we just did it, like, I underwrote it to plan on a 2-year construction period. We finished it all in like 10 months or something like that in the end. But no, so they're, yeah, cute, and that's why we got $1,600 rents on that rather than $1,300. I was a little conservative with those. And this thing's like in the outskirts of town too. It's not even in the city, but that like well exceeded it. And we built a 66-unit apartment complex in Astoria too, and those rent are really high. It filled up pretty fast, and then we're doing another 66-unit in Seaside, just because like as a partnership we have like 26 buildings in that area, and we've just found like the rents are really high because there's a huge housing shortage. So we like the market. The hard part out there is getting debt from commercial lenders when you're doing like, that's an $18 million project we're doing. So it's too small for big investors to give you money, and it's too big for local like credit unions to give you money. So it's a weird mix.
So how are you solving that?
Have 100 conversations with banks until you find one who will do it, essentially. So eventually we found a bank who would do it, and that there's many people who will. They just give you really crappy terms on your debt because they feel like they're taking on higher risk. So like when we're doing a new construction project, I can't remember what we're paying, probably like 11% interest on the front end, but other people are offering maybe 15, which didn't, like our deal didn't pencil when we did it that way. Sorry. Cool. Well, this wasn't the direction I was trying to go, but any other questions on random
You
things?
said,
Yeah.
kind of like the previous slide, you said that you didn't want to take that equity pop. Why was that?
Didn't want to take.
But you did, it sounded like you didn't want to sort of go through the first part and then just sell.
Oh, so I didn't want to have to refinance. So I didn't want to take like 1 to 2 year debt and then you don't know where rates are at that point and then refinance, because that's how you get stuck in a deal. In this deal, it wouldn't have mattered really, just because it's such a large value add. So like we're all in, we ended all in at like 3.75 on this thing, and then the appraised value they gave us was like 3.75. What do I actually think this sells for? Like someone's only willing to pay so much for like this barrack style housing. So like from a cap rate perspective, on paper, on a balance sheet and getting loans, it's awesome. How much is someone really willing to pay going to Astoria for this? Probably like a 7.5 cap rate, while the rest of the market trades at a 6. So this isn't something like we would sell necessarily right now. It's more of a balance sheet play and just borrowing against it for future deals. Cool. Any other questions?
Have you ever thought about, which I guess is not what you're talking about, but like splitting it off and rationalizing the entire place?
To the tenants, or you mean like to
Well, 'cause
investors to
there's
raise?
40 units that it's
Like condoing it?
Or something.
Like-
I mean, it's not really condo, but like splitting each building into its own sort of parcel.
We could, but that sounds like a lot of work, and I don't like doing a lot of work.
But I was just like, you get that cap rate impression.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's plays like that. We don't try to get that creative on all that stuff, because like, okay, we just acquire as many assets as possible, and that stuff is awesome, but we can always do it down the road because now we own it. So I am trying to get my name on as much real estate as I possibly can, because everyone I see that is super wealthy does that same exact thing, and I see how it works, so I just try to repeat what they did. Like, it's not super complicated, but there's a ton of cool plays. Like, you can do stuff like that. I have friends who do that. They'll buy stuff like this, condo it, and do a bunch of stuff like that. But it seems like brain damage to me, and I think my better use of time is just going and buying another deal rather than doing this. And we have like an in-house asset manager we're hiring, so they can just go do all of that while we're acquiring more. Yeah.
I've got a question. You said, oh, I can just go do it. I can spend my time just going and doing another deal, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your best use of your time. Like what are you using to farm those new deals? Like do you have like an army of agents out there? Like what?
So I buy most of my deals on the market. Like, off market's awesome, but you have to spend a lot of time, energy, money, or expertise to get those, and then you still have to get them to the right price or terms that make sense. On the market, you have this whole pool of sellers who already want to sell. Like, if I go on the residential market right now, I could probably put together like 5 to 10 deals that you could buy with no money and still make sense if I spent enough time doing it. I find a lot of my deals now through broker relationships as well. So we're not asking for inspections, we're not retrading them, we're not doing all of these things that a normal buyer is, because we value the long-term relationship and buying more deals rather than just ripping a one-off deal. So like, we truly try to give the seller the best situation that they have. And like on this deal, I told them, you can stay in the deal and make 1.5 extra $1 million if you wait 12 months, and they just didn't want to for whatever reason. So sometimes it's just, I just let them do whatever they choose, and I'll give them all the information. Another example, I'm buying an $8 million, or it was an $8 million 36 unit complex. We're working on this right now. We're supposed to close it Monday. They called us like a couple weeks or a couple months into the process, and they're like, what would it take for you guys to close it in like 14 days? Because he put a seller second on at 100% APR that he couldn't service and got really bad advice. So I said we could buy it for $6 million and we could leave the seller in the deal for 19% of the deal. People realize what you're doing, and like, people want to sell you deals, and then I just know what a deal is, so you see opportunities all over the place. I'm buying a 20 unit right now because I was literally just driving down the street. I saw a complex and I said, oh, that's interesting. And I just looked up who owned it and texted the dude, and now he's selling it to us. There's no shortage of deals, it's just your buying space and understanding what a deal is. There's no shortage of deals at all. You're not competing against each other for deals either. Like, people think there's a limited number and you're competing. There is too much real estate for you to buy. Like, these things are all over the place. Like, I cannot buy enough, like, they're everywhere.
Cool. Could I ask to deep dive a little bit into some of the questions that you ask a seller, or to get to their motivation,
Yeah.
or some of the ways that you found to be successful doing that?
Yeah, number one question is, what are you doing with your money? Because if they do not need all of the money, then you know you can do something creative. Sometimes they do, and then you're just competing on price. But figuring out what they're doing with the money, why they're selling the property, what their goals are with that money, starts to tell you a story. So you really want to like emotionally understand what they're doing, and then you, again, want to give it to them. Most people try to win deals of, I win, you lose. You will not do deals that way, because no one wants to lose. So if you can make it a win-win and truly meet all of those things while you still make money, and people understand, if you tell them, I can't do it that way because I won't actually make any money, they're like, that makes sense. Like, why would you buy a property if you're gonna lose money? So if you're telling them, I can break it down, like, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm gonna make money, here's how you will make money. Like, yeah, perfect. A lot of the time, what kills deals is brokers not wanting to do the deals. Like, real estate agents are the number one thing that stops us from doing deals, actually. A lot of the time, we'll be doing a deal, a real estate agent will say, no, I'm buying a $16 million portfolio that I'm working on. That's 3 different pieces. This agent gets to broker the whole portfolio together because he was open to the idea and understood the seller goals. So most agents do not understand what a seller actually wants. And the hard part is a lot of wholesalers are calling these agents trying to do these crazy things. So it's just like, okay, like, they just shut it down immediately.
You mentioned leaving the seller in the deal. Can you explain that more?
Yeah.
Why would the seller want that?
So I want to leave the seller in every single deal as a debt or equity partner if possible. So, perfect example right here. They could have stayed in as an equity partner. They had like, I don't know, $600,000 or $1 million of equity. So we could have took that equity they had, went and got our construction loan, and multiplied their money and gave them way more back. So they could have stayed in the deal as an equity partner and moved forward with us, or they could have carried a note, so like a debt partner, right? So a lot of sellers, they can take a contract with you because they don't need all the money now. It's a better return on their capital potentially to lend to you rather than to place it elsewhere, and it can be secured to an asset that they already know. So like I've personally sold properties and I'll sell them on contract, like I don't care. Like if it makes sense to me, like and I can hit a price, or I could get these terms, it solves whatever issue I have, great. So I've sold like personal properties subject to, I've sold personal properties on seller carry. I haven't sold a lot, but I've traded out a lot of my like smallplex stuff because I was self-managing it and it was causing me brain damage, and someone offered me a solution to that. So I gave people like no money down deals on stuff I owned, and they got to cash flow day one.
Are you selling any small plexes right now?
I don't have a lot of smallplex left, but I would. Like, yeah, I'll sell stuff if it makes sense. Like, right now, I just buy like 10 to 150 units because once you get to a certain point, it takes the same amount of time for me to buy a fourplex, and I have a partnership now. So it's like, all right, it's 4 of us buying a fourplex is like, it doesn't make sense. It's not worth the time. So like now we're buying 10, and 10 is a little small even, but 10 to 150 units because there's so much of this involved, and it takes the same amount of time to do that deal size as this other deal. Sweet.
Do you have some more deal examples? It's kind of, that might prompt some other questions.
You like deal? So,
Or so, yeah, if somebody, I really
What's
like
it?
the idea of somebody bringing a deal they're trying to get done and see how your mind would take
so
it.
let's see this. So let's say who's brave in the room? Who wants to speak? Let's not start with James. James is pretty advanced. You? Okay. Remember your name.
Ben.
Ben, that's right. Okay. So let's use Ben as an example, and this is what I was trying to do, so hopefully this goes well and doesn't flop. But my goal is, you want to own more real estate, right? That's why you're here. You guys are all here because you want to own more real estate. Cool. So let's talk through like you specifically, what your goals are, what you're trying to do, what roadblocks you're facing, how we can overcome that. So
Yep.
you own a couple small plexes, a 10 to 15 unit built-in, right?
Yep.
Why do you want to own more?
Yep.
What's been your biggest barrier to owning more?
Time and cash.
What do you mean by time?
I'm not a full-time real estate investor.
So you feel like you don't have enough time to find deals?
Yeah, and then once you start getting up into larger deals than where I'm currently at, and I don't have a lot of extra,
Capital?
yeah.
Okay. So you face the same point a lot of investors do. So he's pretty advanced to a lot of you guys. You own, tell us what you own.
14 unit, a 4 unit, and super family.
Okay, so you said you didn't buy anything. That sounds like a lot of real estate, right? Yeah. So from that point to that point, you have different problems from your point to the next point, like James. So for you, you're like, okay, I can't find enough deals. I don't have enough capital. Have you partnered on a deal ever?
Nope.
Okay. So partnerships is the next way to go if you want to. Why have you not bought a deal? Okay. You have a partner right there. Would you put 1.5% down on another fourplex if you had someone who was willing to own or occupy it?
1.5?
Yeah, and he put 1.5% down?
Yeah.
Okay, now you own another $700,000 worth of real estate. So partnering is a really good step to scaling for a lot of you guys. It's not for everyone. You don't have to do it. You can scale without doing it. So we can talk, are you open to partnering or no? Okay, so easiest way for you to scale right now, you could go buy 12 units this year with 3 partners, and you could spend 20 to 50 grand personally with your partner and people who are willing to own or occupy. And those people are everywhere because there's people like, what was your name? Micah. There's people like Micah who want to get in the game, and it's hard, like you don't know what to do, right? If you could partner with someone who already owns a bunch of units, that'd make it easier. So like it's just thinking through what are these next steps and the options. And if you say no, that's not, I don't want a partner, which is completely fine because everyone's goals are different. Now it's like, okay, what barriers can you get through that? So I guess with me telling you that, what do you think about partnering?
Partner's not bad.
Okay.
I've been trying to get Logan partner with me forever.
That's the wrong guy to
Trying
partner
to
with.
small fry for him.
So you're thinking wrong. So you're looking up to partner with a guy. So Logan, for example, I own some deals with him. He brokered to you, right? Is how you know him when he started.
Next month.
So Logan, one of the smartest real estate investors I know. He owns a ton of real estate. For you to partner with someone like Logan, you have to add so much value, which is probably just finding a deal, which you're saying you don't have time to do, that it doesn't make sense to partner there. I would look the other direction for people like Micah, who you can bring up with you and while benefiting yourself. So you are a real estate expert compared to all of your friends and family. Like they think you are crazy for owning 14 units and like 2 other properties. Like they think you're just an alien, right? They look at you like, holy shit, how do you own that much? No?
It doesn't feel like much.
It doesn't feel like a lot. You were just getting started. That's a lot of real estate, correct? Yeah. So for the average person, you are 100% an expert, and you can truly help them get in the game and make it a win-win. And that's another win-win situation, right? You could fund 100% of those deals because it's 3.5% down probably, but you could just go pull a line of credit on your 14 unit and get 100 grand, and you could go do 3 4plexes right now and fund 100% of it for other people. And then you could pick up $2.1 million worth of real estate with that line of credit and none, like, it's like for you personally, I think partnering is a route to go. And you could
still have to do conventional financing, is that?
if you want to do it with the least amount of money possible, that's one way, that's just a way to do it. So I would look at your friends and family, because there's people, every single person in the United States wants to own real estate, right? Everyone is interested in it. So the more you share what you did to your friends and family, they're gonna think it's crazy and they're gonna want to do it too. Because just show them like, hey, this is my net worth, here's how much money I have made from doing this, you can do it with me. And it's just at that point then, it's just finding the person to do it. And you have enough money for that, you know how to find those deals because you've already done them, you just need that key person who wants to do it with you. So like, for example, I have a friend, he worked at Boeing, he was getting into real estate, he was making something like 50 grand a year, he saved up 30 grand. He bought his first fourplex and he's like, this is awesome, I see the power of real estate. He's like, I have $30,000 left. Let me see how many units I can buy with this $30,000. Quit his job on the spot immediately after buying that fourplex and bought another 12 units with $30,000 and built a like $4 million portfolio that he owned 50% of, right? And that was like, he didn't qualify for any loans at that point, he just partnered with other people who did. So that, as you're scaling from where you're at to the next step, like that's exactly what I did. So I quit my job, I could no longer qualify. So I started partnering with others because I knew this deal makes sense for X, Y, and Z reason. Here's how we finance it. I've done it before. Let's just do this again.
So this guy working at Boeing, say you didn't have much cash, ways to get it.
Faith that it would work to other people who didn't understand.
See, like, you just kind of find these deals.
I mean, kind of like he went on the market. He's like, "This is a multifamily deal. Here's what it rents for. Here's what the PITI is. The rent is higher than the PITI. We should do it." At that time in his career, he owns 500 mobile homes now. Like he owns a lot of stuff, but that's how he got started.
It was great.
No, so he quit he bought a fourplex and then he quit, and then he had like 30 grand left, and then he used that 30 grand to find other people that W2s
Is
and
he
partner.
managing it for the people or?
Like usually it's like your time, your money, or your effort.
Yeah, for him, it was just like, owning real estate is good. I just figured out how to buy properties. Do you guys want to buy properties with me? Do you have this much money? Okay, I have the other half. Let's do this. Their thought process is, owning real estate is good, and that's about it.
How do you like? How would you go about structuring that? So say you bring 5% in, you have somebody else who can make some other financing, so you can have a deal, but it wouldn't work. You go through a bank.
So a couple ways you could do it. So you could co-sign the loan with them, go on title immediately. You could have them fund it completely, and you could transfer title to your LLC and buy in at that point as well.
Say that again.
Yeah. So let's say you have someone who doesn't even qualify, but you qualify for more. You could co-sign with them, go on the deal immediately, split the cash however you guys want. If you don't want to go on the loan and they qualify on their own, they could purchase it. You create an LLC, you move title of that property to your LLC that you guys own 50-50 of, and at that point you have equal contributions. They get half the money back out.
Be careful who you partner with, because if you're co-signing on a loan, they can trash your credit right
Oh, yeah.
now. So just be careful who you're partnering with.
The partnering has how I've made the most amount of money I've ever made, and also how I've lost the most amount of money I've ever made. So I lost $250,000 on the wrong partnerships. But it does allow you to do better deals and more deals. So in your case, I'd 100% do that because you're the controlling partner making all of the decisions. If you're just passively investing with someone else, which is how I lost all my money, and that's where I would vet it out a little bit more. But if you're the expert in that case, you're not really taking on risk, and especially if they're signing on the loan without you, awesome.
I was gonna ask a little bit about that, like risk analysis, right? When you're looking at these properties, you're looking at structuring these deals, you're partnering with people, like, do you have some kind of, like, quantitative analysis that you do
Yeah.
to decide, is this too risky for me or what?
Yeah, so I'll underwrite every deal, and I can, if you guys want, I can give you all these spreadsheets for free. We just give them out. I've spent hundreds of hours making these things, and they run every single number you'd ever want. Yeah, I'll give it to you. So for me, I mitigate risk with my debt term, and that's my biggest personal philosophy is long-term fixed rate debt. Real estate will fix itself over time if you can hold on to it long enough. So people that lose money in real estate are typically buying on speculation with short-term debt. Even if you overpay by 15%, you bought a shit deal. If you wait 15 years, you'll still make money on that deal. You just have to hold on to it for the interim, and it has to be worth it on that negative cash flow that you have. So it has to pay for itself, and you have to hold it for a long enough time horizon. And me personally, like that's how I buy my deals and feel like I mitigate risk. What happens in 10 years? I don't know. Like I can't predict the future, but I feel like that's safe enough. And then if I can get longer debt, yeah, like if you guys are buying 30-year fixed rate debt that's fully amortized, like that, to me, that's very, very, very low risk. Yeah.
Okay, I got a few little questions for you.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the property, it's 50% residential, 50% commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the commercial tenants are moving out on me.
Okay.
They're just a little nervous.
Yeah.
And so my question is, what are some things you can do? Another important piece of information here is that for whatever reason, the seller at one point in time signed a first right of refusal agreement with someone else.
Okay.
So the second I change the price of terms, this other party is going to buy the apple. My lenders suddenly went from, yeah, we'll do 75% LTV.
80%.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I can provide some more information. They're
Yeah.
like a quarter of the overall revenue.
So that kind of building is interesting because you can get massive equity pops by increasing rent, especially if you're doing
Right.
triple net. So that might
Yeah, I'm
actually.
personally excited. about moving
Yes.
out.
So you're just getting low. The hard part for you is just the debt.
Correct.
Okay. And the seller is not willing to change anything.
No, he's game.
Okay. I would try to just borrow the difference from him
Okay. Yeah.
on a note, and that would be the simple solution. Other way to do it would be to bridge the loan, potentially negotiate your price down, and then go into long-term financing if you can get a big value on those. Because those buildings are really cool. Okay, go ahead.
Right. The issue with that, right, is if I negotiate too well, this other party's gonna be like, yeah, that sounds like a great.
And they'll take it. Do you have their first right of refusal docs? Because there's a lot of time frames too. That
Yeah,
they
they get 10 days to review it.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, part of our current thinking is whatever we come up with, we will just all we will sign all the paperwork and then not like post date it 10 days before closing. And then, for example, we might renegotiate, it's all handshake here, here's what we're doing. And then what we'll say is, hey, we have a new contract, new terms, new price, we're closing in 10 days.
For someone else, like, are they a business? They're a user in the building, I'm assuming, is why they have the first right of refusal, or no?
No, I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I asked that because in most of these scenarios, like a first right of refusal is from someone who's owned like a tenant in a building, and they'll have one. So that's pretty rare to have.
I'm pretty certain that's not the case, because the biggest
Okay.
thing is when we're moving out.
Yeah. So I would, if
I agree. My first thing was like, hey, Mr. Seller, would you like to get some money in the deal? And 'cause
Yeah.
he owns it because he had 1031 and was running up against 45 days.
yeah, you just had to buy something. The other thing I would do with your lender is an earn out. So yes, I will put 50% down, but when I achieve this, will you give me more money back and increase my debt load? And a lot of lenders will be okay with that depending on who you're
Yeah,
dealing
alright.
with. Yeah, and you can have him guarantee some things. You could also have him potentially guarantee your leases, and the lender may be okay
Oh,
with that.
interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking what other ways, because I've got like 3 or 4 different ways to approach it.
Mhm.
I don't think I can hit him with all 4. I think I gotta like pick my favorite 2.
No, you gotta understand his goals. Is he doing a 1031 again, or
He'd like to.
but he's not sure? What's he doing with the rest of the dollars? Is he doing a partial exchange or a full exchange?
I don't think he fully knows yet. He's talked about doing a 1031, but I don't think he's actually looked in the market. Which is why I think you're just like, hey, stay.
I would try to talk to him about going into partnership with you with his $1031 and say, hey, I'm a full-time investor. This is what I'm going to do with your building. Are you interested in like increasing your return on capital passively versus via me doing it all for you? Because that's your stick right now, right? Like what you're doing. Yeah. So I would pitch him on that, and then you can set your closing time frame to anything that works for you guys too. So now you're mutually benefited from it. If he's on your side and you're rolling forward with
Which I think
him.
he is. I mean, we hung out for 3 days while I went over this entire property. We seem to hit it off.
I would try to pitch him on at least taking some of the money forward with you and investing it with you, because now you can not only purchase this property, but you can go purchase another property with it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, cool.
So yeah, any other questions on that stuff? All right, is anyone else brave and want to try to solve any problems? Yes? So remind me again what you own and where you're
We don't
at.
own anything other than the house. I mean, we're still paying it off, but we have.
Like the house you live in?
Yeah, we're currently on a VA loan,
Okay.
and I think we refied in maybe 2021, so
Okay.
we had pretty good rate on that. I am thinking through like what would be a quick and easy and potentially like the best way to get into real estate, like doing leverage, equity in our house.
Without knowing the specific numbers, this is the answer for 90% of people. Go get a HELOC before you move out, even if you don't use it. It doesn't cost you almost anything, and it's an emergency fund. You'll have plenty of equity in your home if you refinance at that date and they've gone up. You can now use that money for the down payment on your next home. You can use VA loans a couple times depending on your entitlement. Let's say you've used up all your entitlement. Go use an FHA or conventional loan. It doesn't really matter. It's 3% versus 0. It's not that big of a deal. Go purchase another property that makes sense specifically as a rental with that money. You've now used no additional money out of pocket, and then repeat that in and out over and over again. So like you can do that every single year. You have the inconvenience of moving, but you can build a $10 million portfolio with that first investment you made, and then just using lines of credit past that, you can have a $10 million portfolio in 10 years, no problem.
Okay.
So that's the easiest way to do deals. The biggest downside to that, if you're trying to scale, is it takes a year to do every deal.
Right, but it could be a good way to at least leverage, like use the house that we have now and start to build
Yes.
the portfolio that may not be like the long-term game. that
No,
we
it's a really
do,
good starting
but-
point. So the whole goal with real estate is you don't know where you're gonna go in the future. So my first goal with buying my first house was just to reduce my living expenses. Then I was trying to reach financial independence, meaning my passive income covered everything. And then my next goal after that was to become a millionaire. And then my next goal was 100 units, and so on and so forth. So like when I started out, I did not think I would own a 60-unit apartment complex. I had no idea. So the whole goal for you guys is to acquire chess pieces, essentially. Once you have these pieces, you can start doing more deals. You can trade them into other deals. You can collateralize them and get loans elsewhere. So like for you right now, it's just how can I get the next deal is the biggest thing you want to focus on. You could literally close on your next deal in 30 days from the resources you have right now. And they'll use the rental income on a lease agreement that's not even fully rented out yet to help you qualify for the next one.
Okay, so I'll get your phone number and you can talk to my husband about this.
Is he
You
not on,
can tell- well,
is he
please
not
tell-
on board?
please-
So this is another big objection a lot of people have is it's usually flipped where it's the wife not on board, but he doesn't want to own rentals or move or what's
No,
the.
I think his mindset has definitely changed, and I think he's warming up to, like, I think he's more open about it. He definitely tends to be like security and safety, which I appreciate as
Yep.
like being the provider.
So-
And there's like a certain point where I'm like, is that mindset sometimes, like that's also holding us back sort of jumping to that next
Yeah.
level?
So the way to overcome that, and this happens a lot, is to sell the dream. So if there's an outcome of like, we need a lot of money to accomplish this thing in our life, this is a path to get there. Or it is truly more risky to not do this
Yeah.
than to do so, because what are you gonna do for your retirement? Is your 401 gonna pay you? Like,
Well,
no, you have to.
he's thankfully shifted away and is doing
Yeah.
more self-directed, and
Yeah.
he's actually very interested in trading, so he's been doing a lot of trading.
I've never met one trader who has made money over, like, I've never met one person who has traded over long term and made money, and I would not advise that.
I
Like,
mean, that's not, yeah.
like
That's
I've
neither
not,
here nor there, but-
yeah, I know, like, the same with a lot of you guys want to flip houses. I've not view like flipping houses as investing. It is a really good way to make an active income, but if you see, like, most beginners see flipping houses as a really good way to make like 50 to 100 grand, so they're attracted to it because they think it's a short time frame and not a lot of work. Like, you flip houses, it's a lot of freaking work
Well, not me.
for you because you built up the systems and whatnot. But as a beginner, your chance of losing money is so much higher than making money. And if you just want to do it one time because you think it's going to be a payday and it will change your life, do not do it. If you want to flip houses full time, do it. You have to start flipping to learn how to do it as your business. But most people are attracted to flipping just on the front end to make a quick payday. And it's so much easier and less risk just to buy a property, live in it for a little bit, move to the next, and have a long-term debt. If I view it as super high risk, like I would rather go do whatever job you're doing right now currently and figure out how to make more money doing that than change the whole new thing.
So building on her, because
Yeah.
I'm just entering into my first still, and we are doing a flip,
Mhm.
but it's mainly because we don't have the capital. So this is our stepping stone, if you will, to gain capital.
Mhm.
We're pulling, my partner and I are pulling all of our resources together to even try to get the down payment for the high interest loan to even do it. I didn't know any other avenues.
So you're wondering if you like other avenues to flip or?
Well, other avenues for financing deals when you don't have a lot of the
Yeah.
capital.
So so for you, if you plan on flipping long term and owning a portfolio, the skills you will gain will be totally worth it. So if you're like, I want to own real estate and I want to gain these skills, do it. If you're like, I just want to get rich quick and make one deal and do that, then I would advise you not to. But if you're like, I want to own a portfolio, you are going to learn a lot of lessons that are awesome, and you will be able to use those skills to keep building your portfolio. The easiest way to flip is these owner-occupied loans. Again, will finance your whole flip for you with low down and give you cheaper debt and give you 30-year fixed rate debt. So it's a really good entry point into flipping or partnering with someone else who flips. If you want to flip with less money, it's partnering with a seller. So it's leaving a seller in the deal. So you can go to a dilapidated property where everyone is lowballing them, and you can be like, I will give you 20 grand more, but it's coming once I fix up the property and sell it. And they can actually take their equity and contribute it forward with you, because the seller will give us the land into our partnership, and now we can go collateralize that and take it out of the ground without any of our own money. And you can do the same thing on a flip and pay a higher price. Or if you have some funds, you can do a partnership with them. How much money did you guys put into that thing, down payment wise?
50,000,
How much does it cost to rehab?
70.
Okay, so let's say you had 70. You could go in with your 70, leave the seller's existing debt in place, inject your capital into that, and then fix it up and then sell it without having to pull hard money debt. So the hard part about flipping is are you paying 3 points, 12%, or something like that?
10%.
Yeah, so it's just expensive to go through, and there's so many transaction fees that you can negate by doing it a little more creatively, and you can make them more money too by doing it that way. So I have friends who do that, and they'll go in and partner with the seller on all these flips, so they can pay top dollar. The seller makes more money. They don't have these transaction costs through the hard money loans, and they just raise private capital to do the rehab. So there's a lot of different ways, and sometimes it makes sense. They're like, I need my money tomorrow. Great, I'll pull a hard money loan. I can buy it for this price. So it's a little different on each deal. But
That's
here,
what I do.
Yeah.
And I usually come with 2 offers, and I'm like, hey, go ahead, cash out, here's what it is, and it's nice and low. And then I have more like, yeah, I get you a lot closer to me.
So
It's
isn't
less
it
closer than that.
experience of somebody who has a dilapidated house, they're kind of stuck because they can't afford to leave, so they
Mhm.
need money to leave. So how does that work?
I mean, you just budget that in as part of the money you get them. Because I mean, how much does it really cost them to leave? Like 10 grand, 5 grand? So it's just a line item on your math. Is that helpful? Cool. Anyone else wanna?
I want to know what your 10-year goal is. Where you at now?
So with our company right now, we are trying to create $4 billion worth of equity through the real estate we buy. There's enough of us are starting young enough, and then like the people we have seen do it have done it with way less than what we have now. And so I'm lucky enough to meet the people who own $1 billion worth of real estate, and they sit down and share how they did it. And I got to do that in my 20s, which is amazing. And like, for reference for you guys, like a lot of these people are willing to sit down with you because they love people who are interested in what they do and like sharing you guys. So like Gabe, who's one of my partners, I met because I was cold calling banks, and I said, hey, I'm 24 and I heard I could buy commercial real estate, but I don't really know how. Could I come meet with you? 99% of the banks said no. Met with the bank, they sat down with me, and I read all the books, so I knew the lingo and whatnot. Like, you gotta meet this guy in Salem. I sit down with him, I'm like, hey, I'm trying to buy a 16-unit apartment complex. Here's how I'm doing it. He's like, no, don't do it that way. Kind of like what I'm trying to do with you guys. Do it this way, this way, this way. And I go and do it, and bought it, ended up partnering with him down the road. David, Victoria, you met with Gabe, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much information did he give you just for free? Like, he probably spent like 2 hours with you sitting there.
I've already made like huge changes in my property.
Yeah, and that's not unique. A lot of these people will do that with you, like for free because they love, like, they just want to give back because someone else did it for them. Like, some of those wealthy people are the most generous with. Like, I would really like events like this. You'll meet people. Like Ben would probably sit down with a lot of you guys who are behind him too and share his information.